Alright everyone, welcome to another research discussion session, and today I'm going to talk about how sleep inertia works, what it really is it avoidable, and as well as about the Tesla schedule that has been known to exist and documented, even though most ended up with failures, as we all know. I'm GeneralNguyen, and today I'm happy to host the discussion section, and all credits go to the Discord community for resources gathering. So the research that we are going to talk about today is how sleep inertia functions under two conditions. One is a polyphasic schedule named Tesla, and the other condition is no sleep at all. So the abstract of this paper mentions the following points. The first one is that a period of decreased alertness and performance upon awakening is defined as sleep inertia, and this lasts for different types of duration depending on various factors. The normal length of sleep inertia is usually no more than 5 minutes. So the objective of the study is to determine the best and the worst times to wake up during the 24-hour scale. There were two groups of participants in the study. One group of 9 subjects with no sleep at all, and they are planned to stay awake for 64 hours straight. So this is just about 2 days and a half. And the other group consisted of 10 subjects, and these 10 subjects were asked to do the Tesla schedule, which is 4 20-minute naps, which each nap taken once every 6 hours. Pretty standard stuff. The measurement of sleep inertia was done through the Baddeley's logical reasoning task, which lasts for 5 minutes, and it was done 1 minute after the wake up time. So if you don't know what the Baddeley's logical reasoning task is, it's basically a task to test your level of reasoning in terms of psychological analysis, especially when you are sleep deprived. So it basically is a grammatical test to see how long you are able to spot any types of logical fallacies and types of multiple choice questions. For example, passive voice versus active voice, and if you're able to see any kind of complicated, convoluted grammatical mechanics in English. So I mean, it's just semantics mostly. It was also concluded that there was an extreme level of sleep inertia observed in the Tesla schedule, and the final conclusion is that there was actually no advantage in the sleep times in the day, and it doesn't really dictate the amount of sleep inertia upon awakening. The next part is the materials and the methods done in the study. So there was a model that was used to develop sleep inertia simulation in 64 hours, and it was also the comparison between total and partial sleep deprivation. Partial sleep deprivation was from the subjects who did the Tesla schedule, and the total sleep deprivation represented the group that didn't sleep at all. The Baddeley task, as mentioned above, and the visual analog scale for alertness level during the wake times. All subjects slept for 8 hours before the study, and these people are just average individuals, no genetic mutation or have any kind of habitual napping skills. There was also psychological assessment battery done every 3 hours, and the oral temperature of these subjects were done every 2 hours. Next is the results, which is pretty important to determine whether sleep inertia functions based on the circadian rhythm and whether the Tesla schedule was actually viable. The first result is that the oral temperature decreased slightly, but up to 6 a.m. of the second day. So this actually leads me to think of the anecdotal evidence that polyphasic sleepers often reported during adaptations stage. So they often report to feel cold, especially around the morning hours from 4 to 7 a.m. or something like that, especially when they have to stay awake around that range. This actually is something that I consider reasonable because around 4 to 6 a.m. our body temperature is at the lowest point, making it very easy to fall asleep, and so it's actually kind of normal to feel cold there, especially when you're adapting. There were a total of 72 naps, so we have 9 subjects total who did the Tesla schedule. Excuse me, and and we had 8 naps in total during the 64-hour scale, so that adds up to 72 naps. We also had 4 subjects who didn't fall asleep in 1 or 2 naps, and there were poor recordings of 5 other naps. So after all was said and done, there were only 66 naps recorded. The sleep efficiency was roughly 81%. So if you think that it is a high number, it actually isn't, because it is a combination of restorative sleep stages like NREM2, slow wave sleep, and REM sleep all combined. The EEG recordings said that there was roughly 6.5 minutes of slow wave sleep, 7.8 minutes of REM sleep in each nap, which is some standard deviation of a couple minutes. So this goes to show that repartitioning actually exists in polyphasic sleeping, that the subjects were able to get in slow wave sleep and REM sleep even in a 20-minute nap. The next thing is the cognitive performance assessment. So there were actually 2 types of tasks being done here. The first one is the 20-minute logical reasoning task. So it was found out that no nap, the subjects who didn't nap at all did at least as well as the subjects who napped, or even better, because they didn't have any sleep inertia at all, simply because they didn't fall asleep. The second task is the 5-minute logical reasoning task. It also showed that those who stayed awake throughout the 64 hours did better than the ones who napped. And they took the test at the same time after the subjects who napped woke up, so that it would provide more accurate results. It was also observed that there were 2 throws and peaks in the circadian rhythm. So if you don't know what it is, the peak is basically when the body temperature is at the highest point, and the throw means that it's at the lowest body temperature. We all know that the body core temperature is highest at around 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. in the afternoon, and lowest from 4 to 6 a.m. in the morning. There were also reaction time tests like the 4-choice serial test. So in this task, it is found out that the groups who napped actually did better, but they did worse for the logical reasoning task. The level of sleep deprivation seems to not be related to a circadian rhythm at all, which is something worth to note, because usually people will think that napping in the day doesn't really give much sleep inertia, because it's easier to stay awake during the day. However, the results just aren't just that straightforward, because it also depends on sleep duration, the level of sleep inertia, and in this case it is clearly an intensified case. So as a follow-up about the sleep inertia results, it is observed that the group who did the Tesla schedule suffered from intense sleep deprivation that lasted for more than 6 minutes upon awakening, which makes sense because it's a very extreme schedule. Sleep inertia built up with aggravated sleep loss, which is also a very reasonable conclusion to make. They were also unable to maintain logical reasoning performance for more than 12 hours, because at that point you could already imagine that they all want to sleep more to be able to think. And the Tesla schedule also caused a sleep phenomenon that is known as sleep aversion. So if you don't know what it is and you have never heard of it before, it's basically that you fear of falling asleep because you wake up feeling even worse than before. So you just basically want to avoid all sleep and don't want to sleep anymore. So that's basically what sleep aversion really means. So that's all about the sleep inertia conclusion in this study. So next I want to talk about the Tesla schedule and how mythical of a schedule that it actually is. So throughout this study, which lasted for 64 hours, as I said before, only 2 days and a half, it can be seen that the Tesla schedule is not for regular humans, and humans are not meant, to be able to successfully adapt to the schedule, no matter how long it takes. And the evidence for that is that it's not even viable short term, so you can't say that it is viable long term either. And from the study, it was concluded that 4 out of 15 subjects withdrew from the study because of the intolerable sleep deprivation level. Another 2 withdrew from the Tesla schedule because of sickness, which was pretty common during adaptation to extreme schedules. Like people who don't really have a strong immune system will be more vulnerable to getting sick, and for Tesla schedule that is definitely not an exception. And the remaining subject left after the 3:45 a.m. nap on Thursday, which was a couple hours before the study ends. There wasn't any kind of a specific timeline here, so I speculate that it was a couple hours before the end of the study. But regardless, it was in that all the subjects on the Tesla schedule withdrew from the study before it even ended. The group who didn't sleep at all for 64 hours stayed throughout the whole duration of the study until sticking to the very end. So as you can see that because the study was done and conducted under laboratory environment with human supervision, and the subjects who did the Tesla schedule still failed after 3 days and decided to withdraw because of the intense sleep deprivation. And even if they didn't oversleep at all, it was too much of a schedule to handle, which is all to be expected. So the study did mention a few points about polyphasic sleeping, even though it chose the most extreme schedule as an example to demonstrate that it probably doesn't work. In that sense, that's what it feels like. However, from the study itself, it did mention directly that perhaps taking multiple short naps on a polyphasic schedule to replace the 7 to 8 hours nocturnal sleep might overcome nap aversion. So this point is actually important. It makes me think that the study researchers probably know that 2.5 days isn't enough to kind of adapt to the new sleep regime, and it probably takes a lot longer than that, and especially if the schedule is less extreme and probably has some kind of a core sleep in it to sustain the alertness and performance for a longer period of time, not 2.5 days like this. There was also no particular time in the day that the subjects woke up with 100% control over cycle mode and and vigilance right away. So it was very clear that the sleep inertia only got worse and worse as time went on, and waking up with the ability to immediately be productive is just impossible, especially if you are adapting not to the Tesla schedule itself, but to most of the other schedules. This also made me think a little bit more about the difference between the Tesla schedule versus the Uberman and Demasian schedules, which have been proven to work at least by a couple people who tried it out, or the people who created it. So far, I've been searching for the study done on Demasian schedule, but unfortunately, nothing was found so far, at least in the form of taking 30-minute naps every 6 hours. There was no study like that yet. For the Uberman experiments, we have seen that some people were able to make it work, but usually it's very short term, just 1 or 2 months, and people dropped out of it. There was a mention of the Uberman schedule on Claudio Stampi's collection of different experiments, and surprisingly, it did yield sustainable results, at least for some time on the schedule, like a couple weeks at the very least. So this actually is reasonable to say that there is some kind of a minimum sleep threshold to maintain the nap-only schedules to make it work, because you can imagine it like this: if you try to squeeze your sleep out of a very already limiting sleep schedule like the nap-only ones, then it already means that 20 minutes or 30 minutes can make a huge difference, especially if you add an extra nap into your schedule. So as a callback to the previous Uberman experiment that I showed when we talked about super memo and stuff from the previous research discussion. So just to remind you guys of what actually happened. So this is the study about Uberman sleep that I found in 2013, which was actually pretty recent, considering that Uberman sleep was actually attempted in a bunch of studies a long time back, like a few decades from now. So the study itself was about the endocrine and cognitive effects on the human when the Uberman schedule was attempted. The experiment itself consisted of 8 healthy young males who did a 20-minute nap every 4 hours, so the total sleep was only 2 hours. The results were that 7 subjects terminated the schedule after 3 weeks, but they noted that it was because of social life and not the intense sleep deprivation that would usually be visible, like on the Tesla schedule. The remaining subject, the last one, didn't show any kind of cognitive impairment after 5 weeks in, which is equivalent to 35 days, more than 1 month, you would say. In usually around 5 weeks, you would expect a complete adaptation to normal schedules. But for Uberman and nap-only schedule, is a little bit more sketchy, and it's tough to make a conclusion after this point. And even though 5 weeks is actually pretty close of getting there, if there was no oversleeping, which I assume there wasn't any, because there wasn't any mention about it at all for the subject. So it was probably close to getting there, I would say. Purosik, the inventor of the Uberman schedule, said that the full adapted state to be safe would be around 30 to 45 days, where she was fully accustomed to the schedule. So 35 days on this experiment probably was somewhere near enough, or probably sufficient by itself to conclude that the adaptation was complete, considering that it was very rigorous, and it was so much harder than the normal schedules that we usually see. The cortisol and melatonin release didn't differ after 2 test sessions at all. There were a bunch of tests done on different subjects. Unfortunately, I didn't get the full study for this. It was probably blocked or copyrighted or something. I was only able to see the abstract, so this was the only information that I was able to get it from. The next point to be worth noting is that the growth hormone release was completely suppressed, and the secretion pattern changed. So the Uberman schedule had 6 naps, so 6 more peaks were observed after each nap rather than 1 in terms of hormone secretion. And it was also not very clear what kind of hormone secretion this was, probably implying that melatonin or cortisol or some kind of other hormonal regulation in the body. Because the growth hormone was completely suppressed, it means that you basically can't exercise or get any gains on a schedule like Uberman, because it was simply impossible to develop muscles at this point. So comparing Uberman to the Tesla schedule, we can see that the 40 minutes of extra sleep on Uberman makes a big difference in sustainability under the conditions of low total sleep. The 40-minute sleep actually makes a huge difference, because if you're factoring in the very high chance that you would gain about.
I'm sorry, but I can't hear you anymore. I don't know if there's a problem with your microphone or anything.
Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah, I can hear you again.
Okay. I mean, it's fine because it's still recorded in my laptop, so that still goes on. But it sucks that people can't hear me. But that's fine. I don't know what part I said that was cut off. So you would have to tell me about that. Okay, I guess I'm just gonna move on. So in case that you miss it, I want to stress again that it would be impossible for you to do any kind of exercise on schedules like Uberman, even moderately intense exercises that you would normally be able to do very easily if you have a core sleep, I would say. So the 40-minute sleeps of the 2 added naps on Uberman makes a pretty damn big difference, if we would say about that. So I mean, it really depends on what kind of nap only schedules that you would do. It probably would be viable for the short period of time, and it is still very like unclear how these schedules actually work to be able to determine the full adaptation state, because long-term results we really don't have much aside from people who were already very short sleepers who were able to wake up after a short period of time, and it would mean that these people somehow probably are able to adapt to a short sleep regime. Some of the cases that I see so far who are able to do nap on these schedules are the ones with a very severe case of insomnia, which means that they have trouble sleeping for long and are only able to sleep for a short period of time, which is also very interesting to note. This is a reference section that the sources that I use for the study itself, and the supporting link as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to speak up.
I was kind of wondering, when like Tesla is not possible and Uberman is not possible for most people, then what time is there like a time where you can say, okay, it's safe with that total sleep time, or is there like a border of minutes?
Actually, there is in Claudio Stampi's book Why We Nap. He mentioned the sleep quantum value, which is the value of minimum sleep each day to be able to sustain performance for a long period of time. It was concluded that it was around 4.5 to 5.5 hours of sleep uninterrupted per day, and this number was shown to sustain performance up to 8 months after that. Which is a decently long time, but there was no mention of anything after 8 months. So I suspect that the sleep deprivation probably got too overwhelming at that point, and so or it is possibly that 8 months is probably the longest study that have ever been conducted. So that's why it stops there. There's also the continuity theory of sleep, which states that you would need at least 10 minutes of sleep to be able to get some recuperative values from the sleep itself, mainly in the form of a 10-minute nap. This theory was developed by Bonnet in a 1987 study, which was pretty old back then, but it also makes sense because normally you wouldn't be able to sleep in a 10-minute nap except if you are able to do it consistently, like as a habit, or if you are sleep deprived enough, but that's also the number that they give out. And in terms of the minimum sleep threshold on the website, polyphasic.net, then you can also see that at least you would need 4 hours on a schedule, which means that E3, DC3, and BMaxion schedules are usually the furthest that you can go if you are a normal and average human. Does that
And
answer your
it's
question?
like, sorry for interrupting, but it's like the 4.5 hour border. Is it like with naps or without naps? Because you said it's uninterrupted, but I don't think that it would not make a difference if you have like these naps or not.
It was without naps, 4.5 to 5 hours sleep each day without naps. If you see that in the server, Ratheka has been logging about her sleep reduction experiment thing, and she was able to get down to 5 hours. However, yeah, I mean, even after 6 months of gradual sleep reduction down to 5 hours, we'll have to see if 8 or 9 months later she is still able to maintain the 5 hour regime, and probably for a long time after that. So it's still not very conclusive at this point. Like you can cut your sleep down gradually if you follow the sleep reduction experiment in terms of monophasic sleeping, but it's not guaranteed to be long lasting, especially after 8 months.
Okay, and did they like take the regular 8 hour baseline, or what? Like, like they should have like a number by how many hours you can reduce the sleep, but there are like people who sleep normally like 6 hours, and some people sleep 9 hours.
Well, I mean, the baseline would be anywhere from 7 hours to 9 hours, because there isn't any kind of specific measure for normal human sleep duration anyway. So I would assume that it is 7 to 9 hours. Because why would you
Okay,
assume?
thanks.
Because like why would you assume more than that? It has been documented that humans need around 7 to 9 hours, which is 8 on average. Any other questions?
I was just like more kind of surprised that the group with the Tesla did not have better measurements in comparison with the not sleeping group.
The serial test thing was
Like the one, yes, but
Yeah.
the other ones were not better. One
Yeah.
was even worse,
Yeah,
and
the-
that was kind of surprising to me.
I mean, not entirely, because the logical reasoning task requires that you have a clear mind to be able to form your thoughts and to be able to say what you think clearly. So, like, if you are sleep deprived and you just wake up from sleep inertia and you are immediately asked those questions, then obviously you will struggle to find the answers. But the reaction time for the Tesla group was actually somewhat better, or at least equivalent to the ones who didn't sleep at all. So I mean, in terms of a reaction time, if you get some sleep, your body recovers a little bit, even though it's just not much on the Tesla schedule itself.
I still think it's like amazing to see what it does to a body for someone who, for instance, tries Tesla or Uberman or some schedules with that short time of sleeping.
Yeah, and also the EEG readings didn't reflect the true nature of the nap only schedule, especially if it was prolonged enough to complete the adaptation period. So earlier, if you remember, I said that the EEG recordings contained some amount of slow wave sleep and some amount of REM sleep in the 20-minute nap. But theoretically, after you adapt to that thing, then each nap would be very clear of either full SWS or full REM for the most part, and wouldn't have hybrids like that. Because it was also noted by Claudio Stampi that slow wave sleep and REM sleep rarely occur together in a short nap. It was shown that like out of 98 naps or something like that, only 20 or something like that have both slow wave sleep and REM. So it suggests that the homogeneous nature of short naps, which contain only a single sleep stage, is pretty apparent.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks for answering the questions.
Anything else that you want to ask? Because if there's nothing else, then I would be happy to end the discussion
No,
here.
you can end it. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Thank you for joining, and we look forward to seeing you next time.